Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Christine Churchill. I'm the founder and Chief Executive Officer at the Customer Service Institute of America. And joining us today is Chip Bell. Our speaker, Dr. Chip Bell, is the founder of the Chip Bell Group and manages their offices near Atlanta. Prior to starting a consulting firm in the 80s, he was a director of organizational development for NCNB, which is now Bank of America, and he was a highly decorated infantry unit commander in Vietnam with the elite 82nd Airborne. So thank you, Chip, for your service. Yeah. Dr. Bell is the author of several best-selling books. So I think a lot of you know Chip, probably have his books, read his books. I'll give you a quick list of some of them. The 9.5 Principles of Innovative Service, Sprinkles, Creating Awesome Experience Through Innovative Service, Customers as Partners, Managing Knock Your Socks Off Service, and there's lots of those iterations of those. Take Your Breath Away, Kaleidoscope, Delivering Innovative Service that Sparkles, as well as Wired and Dangerous. We today are going to be talking about his brand new book, which is dropping in just a couple of weeks, Inside Your Customer's Imagination. So this is going to be really exciting. So this book is not out yet. You're going to be able to pre-order it if it's something that you're interested in, but you're also going to get a lot of great information from Chip today, as always. He has appeared live on CNN, ABC, CNBC, Fox Business, Bloomberg TV, and probably a bazillion other networks that we know about but aren't listed here. And he's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Fortune, USA Today, Forbes Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur Magazine, Fast Company, and Business Week. So just a few publications that we've heard of. And a little known fact about Chip is he once opened for the Backstreet Boys. So I think so you may have heard this story before, but if you haven't, we're gonna have to ask Chip about it because I need to hear it again. Chip has served as a consultant or trainer to organizations such as the Ritz-Carlton, Southwest Airlines, USAA, KeyBank, Microsoft, Monsanto, True Value, Caterpillar, Deloitte, Marriott, Home Depot, Verizon Wireless, Lockheed Martin, Cadillac, Victoria's Secret, and Harley Davidson, which I would love to see that if they could collaborate, Victoria's Secret and Harley Davidson. But anyway, the list goes on. So we are so excited, Chip, that you were joining us today. And we're going to do it as an interview style today, which I think is going to be super fun. So we're going to ask a lot of questions about what inspired Chip to write this book, like where he's getting all these new ideas from, and, all about how we're just going to keep our customers happy and excited. So Chip, welcome.
Thanks, Christine. Always fun to be with you. We always have a good time.
We always do have a good time. Absolutely. And I'm so excited to have you again. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your new book. So Inside Your Customer's Imagination. So you say there's 5 secrets here. Tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, good. Well, my view is that organizations around the world aren't able to survive in the marketplace very long without continually new products, services, and solutions. They've got to continually invent new stuff. Most of them turn to their R&D department, or they do best practices, or they have innovation centers or test markets, that kind of thing. And my belief, since you and I are all about the customer, is they miss an important resource, and that is the customer. And looking for ways to say, how do I co-create with the customer? How do I get my customer's fingerprints on the product, services, and solutions that I provide to the marketplace? And so the book essentially is how to do that. And we'll unpack all that and talk about it in detail. But that's essentially the whole focus is, how do I co-create with customers, not just create products and services on their behalf?
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important. And to your point, yeah, like it feels like a lot of organizations miss what's quite obvious, right? Is just ask the people using the product, ask the team members supporting the people using the product. What are the complaints? What's going to work? What's innovative and new? They know what they're looking for a lot of the times. And if they don't, you can usually ask enough questions to hopefully get it out of them, right?
Absolutely. Or you can build a kind of relationship where they want to tell you all the time, hey, have y'all thought about this? Have you considered this? And again, part of it is we all know that we're supposed to listen to our customers. We all know we're supposed to focus on their needs and expectations. what they miss often, what organizations miss oftentimes is just as important as their needs and expectations are their hopes and aspirations. And so how do we tap that? How do we dream with the customer? How do we get the customer to go, you know, I wish somebody would come up with something like this. I wish they would come up with this. Now, in fact, it leads to the cover of the book. And the cover of the book, as we see, has this dunk mug on the front. And if you can see the up close, the dunk mug, let's see if I can get it up close enough. The dunk mug has obviously a sprinkled cookie, because last I wrote a book on sprinkles, but it doesn't have to. But the story behind it is Dominic Skinner, who lived in Surrey, the UK, was sitting in a pub and he having tea, and he heard a couple of customers in the booth nearby say, wouldn't it be great if they could come up with a way that our hot tea could keep our cookie warm? And he had his sketch pad and he draws that cup that literally lets your cookie slide in underneath at the bottom of that cup, and it warms it. And he sold the idea to Mocha UK, and the rest is history. But that's an example, and that's why I use that picture on the cover of how do we go, oh, customers say, I wish somebody, why don't you all, have you ever thought about, and learning how to tap that from the customer? And that's, again, what the book is all about.
I love it. Yeah, because I mean, I know just anytime I go out during the day or if I'm going somewhere, I'm thinking something like that at least once a day, right? Something that could make my life easier if they did something differently or thought about differently with the product. I love this. This is so good.
Thanks.
So the book, I think, has a lot of relevance at any time, but why? I mean, obviously you wrote this book before any of this COVID stuff started, but why would this be particularly relevant now?
I think it would be particularly relevant now because we are, in my view, organizations, because of COVID, are closer to the customer. I mean, we're our very lives are in their hands when we walk in their store or their business or enterprise. And so I think we are moving into an era where the customer provider relationship is by definition a bit more intimate than it was when safety wasn't such a pronounced feature of our economy. And so I think because of that, we have an opportunity to say, let's take a look at that. I mean, you're in your life, probably in my life, I know, you know, you're reaching out to people you didn't ever reached out before. You're calling people you didn't call because you got the time. You're at home. You're not at work with all the stuff you had to do in the office. And so I think in many ways that has provided, I think, an opportunity. I always like to think of opportunities instead of problems. Provide an opportunity, I think, to tap the customer's creativity, ingenuity in ways that perhaps we hadn't had before.
So true. Absolutely. Yeah. So you say that there are 5 secrets to getting inside our customers' imagination. So can you take us through those 5 secrets and just give us some detail on those?
Oh, sure. So let me give you a little bit about why those 5. My belief is, and I'll provide just a little bit of context. The book is called Inside Your Customer's Imagination. That means in their imagination are all these cool half-baked ideas. Wouldn't it be cool if we could get inside there? And I also believe that, you know, that imagination in the customers is accessed through a door opened only from the inside. They're not just going to volunteer all that cool stuff. They got to let you into all of that. And so the book is all about, well, that means I need to create a more intimate relationship, as we were just describing, more like a partnership, not just a traditional relationship. So they feel comfortable, safe, and willing to share with me sort of risky stuff or crazy ideas or that kind of thing. They're more willing to be forthright. Now, we all know there are customers that'll tell you anything. I mean, it doesn't take, you know, but most customers need to be sort of invited to do that. And they never do quite trust what you're going to do with this. It's going back to haunt me in some way. And so it's building the kind of safe relationship with the customer. And so in order to access all that, and what you're trying to access through that partnership is innovation, not just information. Hey, where's the nearest thing? What do you think about this? Or what are your ideas? Normal feedback, but innovation. I'm asking them to create with me. And so I took a look at the organizations we all would consider to be the most innovative organizations on the planet. When we think of Google, Apple, Pixar, we all could name the same companies. And so, okay, So if you went inside those companies and said, what were the features of their culture? You come out with things like, well, they have cultures that are very curious. They're always trying to learn more and more and more and more and more. Their curiosity is a big deal. There are also organizations that are grounded and very centered around what they're trying to do and what they're trying to be. They're also all about risk taking, appropriate risk taking. And they're all about creating a trustful environment so people don't feel like, you know, Peter, what's his name? The Deming said, drive fear out of the workplace. Well, if they're fearful, they won't do that. So in those organizations create a lot of trust in the organization. Finally, they're very passionate about what they do. So those are 5 secrets, that I use. And I just borrowed them for organizations and thought, what if you took those 5 secrets, 5 features of highly innovative cultures, and applied them to a partnership with a customer? What would that look like? And so that's sort of the foundation for it. Now, I call curiosity what it is, and grounding, which is all about making sure we're focused on the right problem. We can talk more detail about that. Make sure what they need and what I can provide or align. And all of that alignment stuff is real important. But then I call the next one discovery. Now, it's about risk taking, but risk taking is a scary word. So if you reframe it to say, this is about discovery, it's about learning, it's about treasure hunting and all of that, now I've reframed it so it's not as scary as get out there on that high wire and take a risk. And so I've couched it in terms of, if we approach it as an opportunity for us to learn, then it's more palatable to the customer and it invites more ideas. And then trust, obviously, is the same, and passion. And so those are the 5 secrets that I think are necessary to be a part of that partnership, to encourage that customer to open that door and say, come look at all the cool stuff I've got inside my imagination, which we can use to create new products, services, and solutions that matter to me and matter to you. So that's why co-creation is such a cool word for that.
So that's fascinating. So I love how you went to the most innovative companies and tried to figure out, okay, what are they doing? Like, how are they trying to remain relevant during this time, or during any time, right? Like, how do they remain relevant? How do they keep innovating, right? So can you, let's start with the first one, with curiosity. So what does that look like? I know you can't, paint the picture.
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, I can tell you some of the cool things that I think is important, and they're kind of framing the way in which we go about what we do differently than we have, because now you're able to go, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. Let me give you an example. One is, I talk about a technique, as I call it, be the customer. Now, we all know we're supposed to listen to the customer. I mean, everybody knows you're supposed to listen to the customer. That's not new. And I'm not talking about listen to the customer. I'm talking about be the customer. And I'll give you a couple examples. My wife's hairdresser, Johnny Adair, he also cuts my hair, not very often, but he cuts my hair. That's why it's so long. He didn't cut it. He's getting it cut tomorrow. But nevertheless, and Johnny has been known to get a permanent. And I said, Johnny, why do you get a permanent? He said, well, I realized when women get a permanent, it's oftentimes one of the most awkward, uncomfortable, kind of embarrassing times. And so I figured if I could get a permanent, I'd see what they went through. I would actually experience what they went through, and it caused me to be able to make some changes in how we do that experience so it's much more comfortable for them. So there's an example of how to be the customer. I tell people all the time, sometime when you're out, call your own department or your own unit, disguise your voice, and ask for something out of the ordinary. And so it gives us a chance to stand in the customer's shoes, be the customer, and experience it at a much deeper level. You're trying your best to say, let me demonstrate curiosity in a very active way, not a passive way. Listening to customers is a passive activity. I mean, we all know active listening, but nevertheless, it's sort of a observer role. What I'm suggesting is a participant role. Yeah. And so it's getting immersed in that customer's world in unique and novel ways. the company Moen, Moen, which makes fixtures for bathrooms.
Yep.
They created a whole new shower head called Moen Revolution. It was a big success. I think it still is. But what they did is, now don't tell me how they did this or how they got permission, but they took movies of people getting a shower. And I don't know how they sign here. Would you sign here that we can come in your bathroom? You're standing there naked taking a shower and take pictures.
There are probably plenty of people that are happy to do that.
I don't know. They don't get into that. But what they found is that most consumers spend 30% of their time avoiding the water. And so they go, wouldn't it be interesting if we could design something that the customers don't spend so much time keeping their face out of the water? And so, but that's an example of finding novel ways to really, and what it does to me is not just gets more knowledge about your customer, but you're demonstrating intense curiosity. And we don't get that very much, where people are deeply interested in what matters to us and what's important and what we value. Curiosity is not just listening. It's just I want to learn insights about you. And when we get somebody who's wanting to learn insights, my good friend John Longstreet, and you've heard me tell a story about John, but John was a GM for a large hotel chain in Dallas, and he would have focus groups with the taxi drivers who frequented the property to take people to DFW, because he realized he wasn't going to learn much from the front desk after they asked the question, how was your stay?
Right.
And so he learned from the people who really got the inside the customer's imagination, so to speak, by hearing what they talked about on their way. And they were prompted to say, well, what did you think of that hotel you stayed at? Because some of them were going to get a breakfast every quarter and ask that question. But what he learned was not information, but he gained insight,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what curiosity gives us, is not just information, but it insights, and it builds a bond, builds a relationship where the customer feels like, you really do care about me. I will open that door and share with you my cool ideas. So I think that's kind of what it's all about. It's sort of being like an anthropologist, not just an interrogator of your customer.
Do you find, Chip, though, that some organizations hesitate to do this because they're apprehensive about what they might find?
I think that's true. I think they're scared about the customer. Well, I'll tell you the truth. If you really want me to tell you the truth, now you're going, yeah, they're worried about that. And they are. But I think if you find confident companies, they go, we need to know this, because you'd much rather have them, give you all of that venom than hold it inside and tell 20 people. And if I can get them to get it off the chest in front of me, then maybe they won't sell to anybody else, and I can learn from it, make changes, and they go, hey, they're not so bad after all. And so I think wise companies are those who are confident enough to say, we want our customers to be completely honest with us, and so they try to create an area. And here again, as I mentioned, a part of that whole curiosity secret is the dreamer side of it. And that is, tell us about your hopes and aspirations, not just needs and expectations. What do you wish? What is it nobody does in our industry that you wish they did?
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of, in the book I talk about dreaming with your customer, and it's trying to get them to get outside the normal. One of my fun examples, in fact, I did a video on it yesterday. One of my fun examples, I work with a pizza company, a famous pizza company, well-known pizza company, and they got customers all in, and how do you move around Provy, and and somebody and I was leading some of those focus groups. Somebody in the audience in the focus group says, when are you gonna do something about that box? And they go, what? The pizza box. When are you gonna do something about the pizza box? Well, what's wrong with it? Nothing's wrong with it. You're just missing a lot of opportunity. You could do all kind of cool things. Then they got people to say, well, what would you do if you were in charge of the box for the pizza? And people would say, well, I would create puzzles for kids, because you can always cover it with that kind of coated stuff, so the pizza doesn't interact with the puzzle. I'd have Halloween masks you could cut out of it. People started brainstorming all kind of cool things you could do with a box. And so they did, and it was a huge hit. And so, in fact, I worked with a company that manufactures those boxes, the paper company that makes. But my point is that getting customers to say, what is a dimension, what is a feature of our service offering or our product offering that we could do something totally with? It's not about the pizza, it's also the box. What can we do with the box? And so I encourage, when I work with companies, I say, is there some variable, some feature, some aspect that you could get your customers to help you reinvent? Maybe they hadn't even thought about, because we're awfully close to it. It's hard to see new applications of products and some features related to them, or service and some relationship. The lobby of your bank could just be a training center, and not just a lobby of the bank. I mean, I can go down that whole long list, and say, what if you turned it into, what if it was a school on Saturday when the bank's closed? Well, all kind of stuff. But we all know how to do that, but we don't get customers involved in helping them think like that. And I think that's part of it. So
I love your example of the pizza box, though, because that guy jumped out with it. And most times with focus groups, a lot of people will just want to stick to the script, and they would have been like, oh, that's interesting. And then they would move on. But instead, they went with it and said, this is what somebody wants to talk about. Well, let's investigate a little bit. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Frisbee Pie Company was a pie company that had its pies in a Frisbee tin. And in a tin, the company was started by William Frisbee, but customers said, if you took the lid off that thing, you could make it a toy. And all of a sudden, Whammo got a hold of it and then made it plastic, and then all of a sudden became a toy. But it was customers who said, have you ever thought about playing? And people were already doing that. They would take the lid off the Frisbee pie it had a thin pie on there, and were playing with it as a toy. And they would, when they would call, because it had Frisbee embossed on the top, they would throw it and holler Frisbee, meaning it's like you do 4 on the golf course.
Oh, right. Yeah.
To you. And that's how it all got started. And they ended up changing the spelling of the name from IE to EE to get around the copyright infringement and all that. But nevertheless, customers came up with that. So got a lot of ideas.
Love it. No, they do. Absolutely. And I'm sure there's a lot of stories like that. We could talk, I'd love to talk about it. We could probably do a whole webinar just on that.
Oh, just on that one. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So secret number 2 is grounding. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, 2 things. One is you want to make sure you're solving the right problem, that the customer matters to the customer. But second is you want to make sure there is a proper intersection between what we can do and what you need, what you want, what you hope for. And all of a sudden you can say, well, I wish you could something. Well, we wish we could do that too, but somebody else is already doing that. So you got to make sure you stay focused on what you can do, that what matters to the customer and is within your capability and capacity as an organization to deliver something you want as well. It's something that fits your values or your mission or that kind of thing. So it has to be that intersection.
Gotcha.
Let's make sure we solve the right problem and make sure you think about who you are. And one of my favorite examples is Truett Cathy. Now, Truett Cathy founded Chick-fil-A, and he had a little store, hamburger place, in Hapeville, Georgia. And that store's still there, by the way, is the original Chick-fil-A in Hapeville, Georgia. And he had a friend who was was a producer of food. And one of the things he produced was chickens, like chicken breasts, for the airline industry. And so you remember years ago when you got a meal on an airline, it came in an aluminum platter. And there was a little section there for the entree. And so he was growing chickens, and he was trying to target it so that the breast of the chicken would fit in that little space for the entree. And one year he had a number of chicken breasts, bunch of chicken breasts, that were either too large or too small, and they were rejected by the airlines because it didn't fit the specification. So he knew his buddy Truett had a Harvey hamburger stand. He stopped by Truett's place and said, hey, you want a bunch of chicken breasts? Now, Truett could have said, no, we're a hamburger place. That's what we do. But he goes, no, we are a quick service restaurant that serves food, quick service food, not necessarily hamburgers. So he took them and found a way to deep fry them and became the largest chicken sandwich company in the world. But it all started with that opportunity that he could have easily rejected. No, take these to some chicken company. We're a hamburger company. So I think part of it is being clear about how the ground on which you stand first, and make sure, is that in sync with what my customer wants as well, and finding ways to do that. You've probably heard that great story about the elevator that wasn't going fast enough. You heard that story, and people were fussing, brand new building, brand new office building, and people were already fussing about having to wait too long in the lobby for an elevator. And it's one of my favorite stories, but it makes the point, I think. And so the owner that built the high-rise office building called in an engineer and said, what do we want to do? We got people complaining in the mornings, coming to work, they're having to wait too long on an elevator. And the engineer said, well, you're just going to have to bite the bullet and put in another elevator. And oh gosh, that's going to be real expensive. And he called in somebody else and said, well, what you need to do is you need to get your customers to come, your tenants to come at different times. He goes, I can't tell my tenants when they come to work. And then somebody else said, the problem is not the elevators. The problem is the impatience of the tenants waiting. So why don't we put mirrors in the lobby, floor to ceiling mirrors, and they'll be standing outside the elevators looking at themselves and everybody else in the mirror. They won't notice that way. And it worked. But again, it's beginning to say, let's make sure grounding is all about making sure we're attacking and solving the right kind of issue, problem that has potential. And so we could go about working on the elevator, but until we work on the impatience of the tenants in this case. And so it's that kind of, to me, that kind of thought process of saying, I want to make sure we're clear. And then once you're clear on what we're about and what we're trying to do, then you need to, then part of it, and I write a whole big section on this, is all about how we make sure we stick to that. And that takes a lot of discipline to say, we love rabbit holes. Oh, they're so fascinating. We love rabbit holes, but they're going to take us off point, and we're going to lose what we need, and we're going to lose that relationship with that customer because they don't want to waste their time. And so it's all about having the kind of discipline and taking responsibility for the partnership, not just the outcome, but that relationship. I call it, in the book I talk about it, I call it be the partnership warranty. And I got that concept from, we have a little, near where we live, we have one of those fresh markets kind of thing. And this is called Farm Fresh. And they take produce from people right around the area. I mean, the farmers that bring their produce and products and all of that. So one day I stopped in there, and I love baby back ribs, and I love cooking them on the grill. And I was looking for a mopping sauce. So I went in to talk to him about a mopping sauce. And the guy said, oh man, he said, I got the mopping sauce you're going to love. It's called Judge Klein's No. 9. It is really good. It's made about 2 miles from here. And it's really good stuff. And I said, well, I appreciate that. I said, my concern is it got something in there that's going to keep me awake, because I need my sleep. And he said, sir, if you don't love it, I'll buy it back from you. And so the concept of be the warranty, be the warranty in that relationship is all about, I think, how you keep it grounded. And the book talks about how we make sure we stay focused on what we're about. So that's essentially the whole grounding piece. And I keep, throughout the book, I've been trying to remind people that a lot of great things that we think didn't come from corporate, they came from customers. And a good example is Starbucks. I talked about this. Yeah. And we all think everything in Starbucks came from corporate, but they didn't. They came from customers, like Splash Sticks, pumpkin spice latte, cake pops, Wi-Fi in the store. A lot of things like that didn't come from Tom Schultz in Seattle. They came from customers, and
Well, I want to just chime in and say
yeah.
I want to thank the customer who came up with pumpkin spice latte.
Oh, me too. It's my favorite. I look forward to every October when they finally put it on the menu, because it's not on the menu where we live. It's not on the menu till you get into maybe late September.
I don't know. I think they're all listening to customers now. I don't know if Starbucks has it yet. Somebody may want to pop in the chat if you know. They might have it. Not to totally digress, but pumpkin spice is a pretty serious thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pumpkin ale being stocked places, and I know
Right.
Dunkin's got some stuff already.
Maybe they got it and they just don't put it on the board yet. Maybe
That's true. Yeah, they only tell like their secret special customers, but they don't know who's coming through the drive-through, so they just need to tell everybody.
No. And another one is McDonald's Egg McMuffin. Yep. And we all would think, well, Egg McMuffin was created by McDonald's.
Sure.
But the truth is, it was created by one of their customers, a franchisee named Herb Peterson. And Herb, of course, a franchisee is the customer of corporate. We are consumers of corporate, and we are customers of the franchise. So, but he came up with the idea because they didn't have anything for breakfast. No quick service restaurant really was of any size was serving breakfast. And so he came up with the idea of Egg McMuffin. He hired a local blacksmith to create a round metal thing that they could put the egg in to make it exactly the same size as a Canadian bacon in the bun, and took it into Ray Kroc and said, "What do you think about this?" Kroc thought it was wonderful. And when you research that story, what you learn is that Ray Kroc's best friend was Walt Disney. And when he first started his company, he bought it from the McDonald's brothers and started a company. He tried to get Walt to let him put McDonald's at Disneyland. And they never did. But my point is that he was a very creative guy. Played piano. He was very, but he was a very creative guy. And even though the company is run with very strict, standards and everything, is like Hamburger University, nevertheless, they had the kind of opportunity and say, we can keep who we are and still allow this creativity like Egg McMuffin. And the interesting thing is they were the first major quick service restaurant that started serving breakfast. And today, just breakfast brings in $5 billion a year to McDonald's. I mean,
unbelievable.
Hardly, just amazing that it can do that. So, but that's an example. It's all about making sure we know who we are. So that's the grounding secret.
So, Chip, we did get a question from Wilma, and she is asking, it says, great to unlock the imagination of your customer. Isn't brainstorming in the corporate world designed to foster this for product and service development? This should tune into your voice of the customer.
Well, I think the way I look at it is the answer is yes. And the way I look at brainstorming is sort of a technique, and I talk about brainstorming and a lot of other kind of techniques, but in there. But yeah, brainstorming would be a technique, and it's all focused on deferred, judgment under the auspices of it's a whole lot easier to tone it down than it is to think it up. So I create an environment in which people will think it up. Then we can come back and judge it and tone it down. But I think it's a technique, and there are gazillion techniques. I'm a big fan of lateral thinking and Edward de Bono and some of his work. Alex Osborne and Applied Imagination. There's tons of great resources out there about the creativity. But the fundamental piece is, before I can get to using those techniques, I got to have the right kind of relationship with the customer so they'll want to do that with me. And they're eager to do that with me. So yeah, she makes a great point. But the concept behind brainstorming is absolutely needs to be woven. It's the elimination of judgment and fear in an environment where you want to come up with those ideas. You don't feel chastised.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's probably a great segue then into discovery, because we were talking about that, where it's like really about creating an environment where they're understanding that you're trying to discover what it is that they're looking for versus draining information out of them could potentially be used.
Exactly. And discovery is all about risk taking and how you encourage that and how you create this environment we're just now talking about that Wilma asked about. Mm-hmm. and I start that section by my grandmother, and I lived maybe a half a mile from my grandparents, and on my mother's side, and she had a chicken yard, and she raised a lot of chickens. And that one of my chores when I would go up there is I'd go out there and get the eggs out of the. They'd have these little cubbies, you know, like kids have at school, and they'd have straw in there and this little light, single bare light in each cubby. And what was interesting is, and I hadn't thought about this in years when I was writing this, but when I was up there getting eggs, and they were just about eggs, the chicken didn't care. I mean, I had plenty where that came from. But when the goal was baby chicks, we call them biddies where I grew up. But when the baby chicks it was the whole thing was different. One is that light was turned on, and as a tool, as a help, think about the metaphor here, the light helped with the incubation process. And you came out there to try to get those eggs, and you had a fight on your hands because that chicken wasn't interested in you taking the egg it was sitting on. And I thought my grandmother had a garden right beside it, and she would work in that garden, and she would sing all the time when she'd work in the garden. And I used to wonder as a kid, I wonder if that helps those chickens because they were right nearby. And she had a really high fence around it. So the fox, there were a lot of fox in my area. They couldn't climb it, and they couldn't get in there. So when you think about what were the features here we just talked about, we talked about protection. We talked about light and how we make sure the right atmosphere is there. We talked about singing and the music that might have helped in that whole process. And so to me, it was sort of a way to start that chapter to say, how do we create an incubation of ideas? And that's why I like to call it discovery, because it is risk-taking, but it's done hopefully in an atmosphere and a spirit that makes it not judgmental and focuses on helping that be infused in the customer's relationship. And because, you know, by definition, as I said, we a lot of our childhood imagination and stuff like that is kind of wrung out of us as we get into the corporate world. I always remember Gordon McKenzie. Gordon wrote a book called Orbit and the Giant Hairball. Great book. He was the chief creative person at Hallmark Cards, and he retired, and he went to work for the school system in near Kansas City, Overland Park, where they were headquartered. And he's an artist, obviously working in the creative department. And so he would go into the first grade and he'd ask children, how many artists do we have? And every first grader would raise their hand. And then he'd go to by the time he got to the third, how many artists do we have here in the third grade? And about 2 or 3 kids. By the time he got to the 5th grade, you may have one closet artist that would sort of timidly raise their hand. And he goes, what happens between the 1st grade and the 5th grade to cause people to be so reluctant to say, I'm an artist? And so I've never forgotten that story, because I think it happens as we go through the whole enculturation and socialization process that enter into the workforce, you know, where, you know, cool, funny, weird, funky ideas are not what we're about. We're about rational, logical, analytical, you know. And so the whole characteristic of the orderly work process is sort of, becomes a left brain world, and the right brain is not exactly honored in the same way. We also not know that people in the business world aren't equally divided by a left brain and right brain. We all know that. And so it's all about, how do I create an atmosphere where we keep telling people it ain't picture day. That's one of my favorite lines. It's not picture day. Meaning it's not about perfection. Perfection is the enemy of progress. And so how do we create that kind of atmosphere? And how do we create an atmosphere where people, it's okay to do weird and crazy things and say weird and crazy things? And so the book walks through lots of techniques aimed at trying to create that, with lots of examples and stories a Harley story. I even have a Harley story about how they almost died. And Willie G. Davidson, who's the grandson of the founder, did a smart thing. He put his beret on and black jacket and got on his Harley, and he went from dealership to dealership to dealership to dealership, asking them, what do you want Harley to be? Not what do you want us to do, what do you want us to be? And what he learned came back, and they totally changed their approach to the marketplace, the kind of bikes they created, and it was the birth of the Harley Owners Group that we all know about. So, but it was all about creating a different environment, a learning organization. I had the wonderful opportunity of working with Harley under Rich Tierlink when he was the CEO. He's retired now, but and he was all about, I remember Rich would go before all of his dealers. One of the things I did is I taught in their Harley Davidson University. They would do this every year. They had on the West Coast, Central, and East Coast. Every year they had Harley Davidson University, and they would bring in all of their dealerships from all over the world, and they'd have to hold it over 9 days. It was a 3-day program. Wow. They held over 9 days because they could only get a third in at one period. So I would do my program 3 times over that 9 days, and I got a chance to hang out with them for a great deal. And he would go before each group, and he'd start off, most of the time he'd start off with saying, here's something I screwed up on this week and what I learned from it. And his whole message was, and our goal is to fail forward and fail fast and learn from it and move on. And obviously Peter Senge, who wrote The Fifth Discipline, used Harley as one of his examples of a true learning organization. And so I think that's part of the atmosphere is, how do I turn this partnership into a learning relationship so that we grow and learn from it? And again, that helps the risk-taking take on a little different tack. So anyway, that's a fun section to talk about.
Well, and I love what you're saying. I mean, too, just even going back to what you were talking about with the people identifying as artists, and then that switching around, and like how we actually, in order to be successful, we really do need both sides of our brains to be firing. But you're right, the way our world is wired is it's kind of generating or sending people down a road that's, one side of the brain is doing most of the heavy lifting, even if they're not naturally wired that way. So for a lot of people, that puts them in a little bit of an uncomfortable zone. But exactly. I think more organizations are opening up to the fact that there is, supreme value in having people who can either use both sides or bringing one side more heavily to the table than the other. And it definitely helps with corporate culture, and discovery and innovation. So I think your point is.
Oh, yeah. And here again, it's valuing that side, valuing those people, and recognizing they need more support because they're out of their world.
Right.
They're in a logical, analytical world of business, which doesn't trade on their creative, innovative, ingenuity side. And so we've got to help bolster that. And so, that's part of what the goal of the thing is. My good friend, John Longstreet, back to John again, who ran the Harvey Hotel for years, he would hold every week, he would have what stupid meetings. And he would always, it was 1 hour, Friday morning, every week, and he would have his staff come in, and he would always invite a guest. So I got to come sometimes. He would always invite a vendor to be there. And the whole concept was just what's stupid? What doesn't make any sense around here? Help us see what we can't see. Well, what it did is obviously legitimized people going, well, why do we do it like that? Or what if we did it like that? It created an atmosphere in which it was he also had a technique called 2 more ideas in the room. There's always 2 more good ideas in the room. So they would come to an end where they would brainstorm ideas about how we can make some changes from what we do. And he would always say, okay, there's 2 more ideas in the room. Let's hear them. And he would push until he got those 2 more ideas. It was amazing how sometimes the very best ideas were those last 2 ideas. that people were encouraged to reach a little bit further. So again, it's stuff
Yeah.
like that that helps us, I think, create that kind of atmosphere.
I love it. I love the what's stupid meetings and the two more ideas in the room. That's great.
Yeah.
Those are easy things. Like anybody who's listening,
Yeah.
you hear
Yeah.
things, you get the book, you're working on the strategy. But in the meantime, while you're waiting to figure out, okay, how are we going to implement these 5 secrets? You can do something as simple as what you just said.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I tried to litter the book full of ideas that, like one that's kind of like controversial, I guess, is Stephen Covey has seek first to understand and then to be understood. I go, there's a step before seek first to understand. You got to create a relationship of empathy before you can seek. And so empathize first, then seek. And so, I mean, that's a kind of, I hadn't thought about it like that. Unless I've got the kind of rapport, if I seek first to understand, I'm not likely to hear anything. So,
Yeah.
or what I need. And so, anyway, I tried to do a lot of things in the book that were aimed at creating a little different angle at maybe things we always talk about, but this is a little bit different to make us remember it and look for ways to apply it in new ways. So.
Yeah, and I mean, and to your point, I mean, maybe Stephen Covey took the assumption that trust was already there, but I mean, that's your 4th secret, right? Is trust. So,
Right.
I mean, and that's part of the empathy building, all of that good stuff.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Before you jump into trust, I just want to throw out to anybody who's listening, like, if you have a question, pop it in the chat, pop it in the Q&A. Just that way we can make sure that we get your questions in before we tie up at the end, because I know we have 2 more to go. So just if you have any questions, jump in. All right. Sorry. Go on, Chip.
No. The next one is trust. And the fun part about it is that when you discover there is a pronoun in the middle of that word, some of us always are kind of surprised by that, didn't notice that. But again, it's about how do I create a trust partnership, a relationship that is grounded in trust.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of stuff in it, but the one I want to talk about for a little bit is truth. And truth is about transparency, which is critical to trust, obviously. And it hit me one day. I was watching some TV program, and it was about it was like A Few Good Men kind of movie. And somebody took the stand, and they put their hand on the Bible, and they raised their hand, and they said, "I swear to tell the truth." And they didn't stop there. Now you think about it. That should be enough, right? I swear to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we don't stop there. We go, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God. Now, I've thought a lot about how come we go through all of that? Why not just, I swear to tell the truth?
Yeah.
Well, they created this 3 trust deal, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. They created this 3 trust because a lot of times it was aimed at fleshing out sort of white lies, sort of stuff we kind of hold back.
Gotcha.
Talk about. And one of my favorite examples is back in March when we were all flying, early March, when we were all flying all the time. I was on a flight and the pilot landed and said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call them Mayday Airlines just for fun. Another on-time arrival with Mayday Airlines. And I looked at my iPhone and we were 14 minutes late. And I go, what? We're 14 minutes late. He just said, another on-time arrival. So as we're getting off the plane, I said, he's standing in the door of the cockpit. And I said, we were 14 minutes late. And he said, well, no, actually, according to FAA, we were on time because they give us a 15-minute grace period because you can't control what happens out there on the tarmac and whether they're going to have gate attendants ready to bring this thing in. Sort of like EBITDA. He says, it's like EBITDA. And I go, I get your connection there. We don't have any control over interest and tax.
Right.
And so I said, but, think about transparency. What does the customer take away from that? We're on time. No, you're 14 minutes late. I mean, can you imagine?
That's just asking people to check their watch.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, can you imagine that great song from My Fair Lady? Get me to the church within 15 minutes of the wedding. I don't think so. That's kind of crazy. But the point is, in a really good partnership, we got to be bone honest. We got to be totally transparent. We got to be, not do that of saying we got grace periods here, which allow us to not be totally transparent in what we do and how we do it. And so, it's being able to have a relationship in which that kind of trust is there. So I give you a fun example, and it's that relationship that says, let's just be totally honest. This is kind of offbeat example, but the first time I ever got time with Gloria Steinem, if you remember, Gloria Steinem was the editor of Ms. Magazine, founder, editor of Ms. Magazine, and one of my clients at that time was Quad Graphics, and Quad Graphics was headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and they were upscale, fancy photography company, printing company. So they did real high graphics, National Geographic, Playboy, magazines that required real high-end graphics, and they did Ms. Magazine. And Harry Quadracki, who was the founder, he passed away. But I was there to do a training session, and I'm up on the second floor, and I see down in the thing, in the printing area with all the printing presses all around, there's Gloria Steinem, and she's out there talking to the printers. And I just go, isn't that Gloria Steinem? Yeah, that she comes up here all the time because we do her magazine, and she worked out a deal that it would be okay for her to critique their printing process if Harry was okay in critiquing her Ms. Magazine. So they worked out this relationship. So they've got, and so I thought, isn't that a great trusting example of I'm allowed, normally you wouldn't be allowed out there on that printing floor, but she's there on the floor talking to the pressman. And I never forgot and how powerful I thought that was. In fact, when they opened a new plant, they brought her in to kind of, do the launch and open it up and be there for the big grand opening. And so it's creating that kind of authenticity, trust, and openness. And again, you're all trying to help the customer open up that imagination and let you in and experience the goodies they've got inside. So it's all about create that. But my favorite is passion, obviously.
Tell us about the passion part.
I love that. Well, passion is the energy. I think of it as the energy source of the partnership, and it's I love the fact that passion is 3 words, and we miss that sometimes because it's pass, right? It's it's on, and it's bringing the best of who I am to someone else, and so it's creating that kind of enthusiasm, excitement that's infectious. It says we matter, we're important. It's the cheerleading side of a partnership. And I always remember Seth Godin. We all know Seth, and Seth would sometimes he would end his speeches by asking the audience, hold up your hand as high as you can, and then people would do it, and then he'd say, okay, hold them up a little higher, and people invariably would hold them up a little higher, and he goes, what's with that? Well, to me, it's a great. I put that in the book, and
right.
I think it's a great example of, do you want a partnership that holds back a little bit, or do you want to just go all out? I believe in this partnership. I'm going to put everything I got in it. And so it's all about how we create that kind of relationship that we bring the best of who we are, and we try to make sure we help our partner to bring the best of who they are in that relationship. And so it's all about, I talk about a lot of techniques of how to do that, like elevating innocence. Why don't you bring in some kids next time you're brainstorming, bring in some second graders, they're always great. I work with a major bank that would have customers come in on Saturday at focus groups, and they would invite elementary kids to come join them. And you paired up with a kid, second grader, third grader, and then you'd be in a whole group. But people still years after that talk about how great it was and how much they learned by bringing that innocence and enthusiasm and passion that only a second grader can do And so it's part of that. I think it's designed to do that.
Mm,
It's also about how we, as you and I were talking about earlier, nobilize that partnership.
yeah.
And the part of it is nobilizing is how we treat each other like royalty, how we treat each other with a sense of honor and respect and affirmation, and we make it matter. I've been married a long time, over 50 years, and my wife said we never quit dating. And so would it be like to have a partnership, a work partnership, where you never quit dating, so to speak? You treated it as always fresh, new, and different, and you treated like with great honor and great respect. You nobilized it. You made it noble, and you were very specific about it. When Queen Elizabeth knighted Sir Elton John, he didn't miss why. She talked with him in that ceremony about his service to the arts and what that meant. And so it's being very specific about all of that. And so that we affirm each other, but we do it, in a very specific way, so we don't miss what we need to replicate, miss what we need to continue to do. And so to me, it's all about that. It's all about looking for unique, my wife and I give each other little gifts sometimes, and they don't have, there's an old Southern word called Sursy. 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 Sursy is a gift without purpose, without any meaning other than I just thought you'd like this, and I just got it for you. There's no event, no ceremony. There's no, this is for some particular special. It's just, I wanted to do something nice for you. And I learned that word when my wife and I love to go to rustic places and camp and all that kind of stuff. And we stayed at a little cabin up on a river, and we rented, just right on the water. And we opened the refrigerator, and inside was a note from the owners saying, we thought we knew you'd be arriving late. We thought you might enjoy having this. And they had baked a cake for us and put it in the refrigerator. Well, that's a Cersei. Hey, just do it because we want to do it. And so when we bring that kind of passion and energy to the relationship, you go, I can't wait for our next meeting. I can't wait for our next get together. And especially it's important with customers, I think, because it helps build that relationship or deeper. And I want to kind of summarize all that one of the major byproducts of co-creating with a customer is their loyalty and their allegiance goes up dramatically, because when we get customers and a chance to put their skin in the game, their fingerprints on what we do, the old adage, people care when they share. If I can get them to share, their loyalty goes up dramatically. So it's all about co-creating.
Huge. No, and that is such an exceptional point. Yeah, if you get them involved, they're bought in. Like they want to be a part of it still, and they know you're listening. Wilma also said he just today's challenges is to embrace your concepts in this COVID-19 pandemic pandemonium. And then she mentioned that you and your wife still kind of dating kind of resonated with her with the relationship she saw with her parents. And I did want to mention that because I think that's really interesting, because I think that you were talking about the passion and energy in a relationship, right? But it all goes back to curiosity, because you never stop learning about each other, right? So that's kind of brings all the five secrets full circle. Right. But you can stay passionate if you're complacent. And
right.
That's, you're not going to be passionate about your customers if you're not interested in what it is that they have to say about your business, your product, and how you're serving them. So I just thought that really kind of connected the dots, at least for me.
Good.
So I loved that. And I love Cersei. I'm all about that. That's like, Alice in Wonderland's unbirthday. See, so yeah. Cersei, who knew? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. And it's bringing that element of surprise to the relationship. And so that anything I think that has, even if it's whimsical, it says you care.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of surprise, I think some of you guys might know this, but if you've hung in with us this whole hour and listened to all these amazing things that Chip have been talking about, he has been so generous to send signed copies of his book prior to this, Kaleidoscope, which is also an exceptional book. If you have been with us the full hour, please, please, please email me. You can do it at info@serviceinstitute.com or christine.churchill@serviceinstitute.com. Or if you're already in our CRM with your address, we will send a book out to you. So you'll get this Kaleidoscope book, which is amazing. And even more importantly, Chip, tell us where we can pick up one of these and what this is.
Oh, good. This is a songbook. I'll tell you real quick. Songbook. I decided I love music, and I just love writing music, composing music. So I wrote a songbook. There we go. There's one of the songs right there. Dang, isn't that impressive?
It's impressive.
At any rate, I thought it'd be fun to do. Since it's all about imagination and breakthroughs and creativity, why not do it? But anybody who pre-orders the book and lets me know you pre-ordered the book, we'll send you a copy of the songbook. And the accompaniment is on my website, on the book page of my website. So
awesome.
Even if you don't get the songbook, you can go on chipbell.com to the book page and click on Inside Your Customer's Imagination, and you'll get to hear the songs, the accompaniment to the songs in the songbook.
I love this.
Get the book. The book's available everywhere you buy books. It's now pre-order, as Christine says. The official launch date is September 8th, but you can pre-order it anytime. And so, in fact, I just got word this morning that it was number 4 on Amazon's new release. So that's pretty good.
Congratulations. That's amazing. And the thing, I think anybody on here who's owned a Chip Bell book, and if you haven't before, I highly recommend it. I just think this will help complete your library. I think you can't have a customer service library if you don't have Chip Bell books on your bookshelf. So let's see. Oh, it says Chip Bell, meet Joshua Bell to be the violinist in your songbook. I
love it. I can use a good violinist.
All right.
One song needs a fiddle player. So he can double as a fiddle player.
Fiddle player. Yep, exactly. Oh, I love it. Hey, well, Chip, this was amazing. Anybody have any outstanding questions for Chip? I know we're just a few minutes over our time, but does anyone have any questions or comments? Someone says she just loves your style of storytelling, which I couldn't agree more.
Thank my granddaddy for that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a lost art.
Yeah.
Really
I had
is.
a granddaddy who just was an incredible storyteller. So I learned at the master's knee.
Okay, Lourdes popped up here. I know she put it in the chat as well. That keeps him motivated to do more. I'm not 100% sure if that was in respect to the pilot chat. Lourdes, do you have more information? And then, let's see. No, she popped up with, sorry, Lourdes, if you have a little bit more information, I'll just wait for it. But yeah, Chip, any closing remarks? Or are you good?
I'm good. I just say, look for fun ways to get your customers. I can tell one little quick, if we got time, Christmas, my wife and I stayed at the Craddock Terry Hotel in Lynchburg, Virginia. It's a 1905 shoe company, shoe store. Used to be a factory. They used to be the 5th largest shoe manufacturer in the nation during the war. And so they've turned it into a hotel. But it's all about kind of customer participation. For example, they have a concierge dog, Penny Loafer. We love Penny. And they invite guests to walk Penny in the historical area of Lynchburg. We were there over the Christmas holidays. They had a Christmas tree, a little Christmas tree in our room, and they had a shoe box full of ornaments, shoes, that allowed us to decorate our own tree. I mean, they just pulled out all the stops about what are the things that we can do that will give our guests an opportunity to be actively involved in their experience, participating, creating their experience. To me, it was a great example of what we're talking about. So I highly recommend the Craddock Terry Hotel in Lynchburg, Tennessee, Lynchburg, Virginia.
So much fun. Thank you so much. Hey, Chip, I'm pretty sure we will see you here again. And I do appreciate your time today. Thank you guys, everyone, for participating, jumping on chat, Q&A. And yeah, send me your email address again, Christine.Churchill@Service Institute, or your email. Send me your mailing address so we can get that signed book out to you. And jump on Amazon, pre-order this thing. You won't be sorry. So. Hey, Chip, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.